Hi, come on in.
And join in. It's the Very Merry Life. Hi, I'm Mary Hendricks, and you might know me as that relatable AF mama over on Instagram who hopefully feels like an old friend at this point. And if not, it won't be long till it feels that way as we get raw, unfiltered, and very unapologetic in all things motherhood, marriage, sex, and more. From moments worth savoring to moments worth surviving, get ready to leave feeling seen and supported. You have a friend here now, so hey, take a seat. What's going on? All right, guys. Hi. Hello. I have someone on very exciting, and I would be shocked if you didn't follow her already on social media channels, but I have Dr. Tracy, pronounce her last name for me because I'm sure I'm going to get it wrong.
Dalgleish. It's a tricky one.
Okay.
It's very tricky. I did not change it when I got married just so I can see people struggle with it. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's fine. My maiden name is Zedalis, Zedalis. So I used to struggle with that. And now I moved up to Hendricks, which is much more... Like
you can relate to that struggle though, right? It's the last, which is why I go by Dr. Tracy. It's so much easier for everybody.
Yeah. Well, so if you don't follow Dr. Tracy on Instagram, are you on TikTok?
I am, but because, all the feelings over there. But follow me on Instagram. Say hello. Send me a DM. After you've listened to today's episode, I love hearing from the community and from people who are listening. That is one of my favorite parts of doing this work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we followed each other, and I know I think you followed me first, then I followed you back because once I saw your page, I was like, this is great. This is the stuff that we need. And I'm going to give you a second to introduce yourself. But I know for me as like being a mom and being a wife, like Dr. Tracy's stuff is just incredible information and a very valuable resource for women, for couples, for mothers. It's a great little thing. So before that, go ahead, introduce yourself, and then we'll get on into it.
And let me echo that back to you, Mary, because the reason I followed you was a reel around, I don't know how many things you listed, but all of the things that no one told you about your relationship after having kids.
Oh yeah, the taboos.
And I don't even remember what I was doing, but maybe scrolling in bed. And I was like, yes, somebody is finally talking about this, because the reason I started my social media space and started stepping outside of my office was exactly that reason, that nobody was talking about just how hard relationships are and how much our relationships change after having children and how important our relationships are ultimately for our overall wellness. Mm-hmm. We know that there is a bidirectional relationship between our relationship satisfaction and how we're doing in terms of our mental health. And then also how it impacts our children and what it means for them to go on to build healthy relationships. So thank you, Mary, for all that you share in the community that you're building. Thank you.
Yeah. It's been a journey.
It's not easy.
No.
Yeah. I'm a psychologist and a couples therapist. I'm up here in Ottawa, and it was in the depths of our Canadian winter where I was dissatisfied with the discourse around relationships that was being shared on social media at the time. So that was back in 2017. Mm-hmm. And therapists weren't really on Instagram yet. And I have always had the goal of being able to reach more people, to reach them outside of my therapy office, knowing just how hard it is to be able to come see me, whether it's around a financial reason, a time reason, because when you have a newborn and a toddler at home, it feels impossible to get out of the home and to get the therapy that you need. But also because of the need to share evidence-based skills and tools that everybody can use at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that. And 2017, like I think I know of 2017 Instagram. I don't know if you've heard of the new app that's coming out, Lemon 8. People are all about this Lemon 8 app. And it's like this brand new, everyone says it's like this Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok made a baby app. And you get on and it is like this aesthetically pleasing app where when I got on, it was like PTSD of like, I was like, this is like circa 2015 to 17 Instagram. And I don't want any part of it. I'm like, I don't want any part of this right now. Because I remember Instagram being that where it was a very perfectly crafted place to be. And you really did get up in your head about what's right, what should be, what should be done a certain way. And that's when I was starting to have babies and things like that. And I know for me, I got on during a pandemic, which I think a lot of people did. And not that I was on before him, but the pandemic was what like brought down the veil of being like, okay, like screw the bullshit.
Let's just share it all.
Yeah.
Share it all.
Yeah. Let's just get into it. But yeah.
And it's interesting too, when I think of my own parenting journey. I mean, the pressures, so my first was born in 2015. The pressures and the messages were still there. I still had the messaging of, is that how you're going to feed your baby? How are you sleeping? What are you doing? All of those same things are there. And back then I remember it very much being the veil hadn't been removed yet.
Yeah.
That a lot of people were showing up with these beautiful pictures. And I remember thinking, this couple is so happy. And here I am just having my first or second child, and I feel resentful towards my husband and feeling truthfully confused because as a couples therapist, I've been helping people for over 15 years, helping couples and new parents tackle the very issues that I was finding myself being swallowed up in. Yeah. And I was getting swallowed and sucked into shame, which is, why am I struggling with this? Yeah. Why am I the only one struggling? And I'm so alone in this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and especially after that first baby, I remember that. I remember I have friends now. I was amongst like the kind of the first of my friends that have kids. So that in itself was a very isolating experience because you don't have anyone to go to. And that's what made Instagram so hard, is because you go on these things. But I remember having my first, and all of a sudden I was hit with a period of just like looking at like of disdain with my husband. I was like, I really don't like you, but what is happening right now? Because this should be like a really like, oh, we're all together. We have a baby now. And I was like, why do I hate you? Why do I hate your guts right now? And I remember telling my friends that now who have babies, I'm like, don't be shocked if all of a sudden like you start just having feelings of like hatred. I'm like, talk about it. Let them know. Yes. But I'm like, don't be caught off guard. It's not like, chill out if it happens, because it's going to be okay. Yeah.
And let's normalize that. So we know from the research, if we want to go into some research numbers, 67% of parents will report lowered relationship satisfaction in the first year to 3 after having a baby. Yeah. And that, I believe that number is likely higher to some degrees, but that is a really big number. And so it is hard because why is that? Well, one, the way you solved things before are going to be completely different than what you're doing now. Before, you had lots of time, you had space, you had intentionality to go towards each other. Mm-hmm. But now after having a child, that energy is going towards a dependent being. Yeah. You're giving so much to your baby. On top of that, you are sleep deprived. There are hormones surging through your body. You're navigating this whole other new load. And then the key piece here is that for many of us, I don't know about you, Mary, but for myself, we didn't take a relationship course to prepare our marriage for a baby. No. Yes, I'm a couples therapy. Yes, I teach people all of these things, and I'm still human. Yeah. So we weren't talking about the mental load. We weren't talking about, what are we going to do when I'm sleep deprived? We didn't talk about how are we going to navigate that resentment or feeling like roommates, because literally you are 2 ships passing in the night, just trying to survive during that time. So a lot of couples will show up in my office, Mary, often between the age, when their kids are the ages 2 to 4 or 5 to 7, tend to wear like that age range, because somebody has woken up. Mm-hmm. Somebody has said, I'm finally sleeping and I'm looking at my partner and I'm lonely. Mm-hmm. I feel alone. I feel disconnected, and I don't want to keep going this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I can relate to it. I can relate to it a million times over, because my husband and I have been there. And then I've talked about that. I actually shared a reel, I don't know when, I think back over the summer, and it's just me. I think it was an turning audio of someone laughing, but it's like, you can tell it's like a nervous laugh. And I just said, when someone says that their relationship is stronger after having a baby, and it's talking about like the roommate phase. And the comments coming in on it opened the gate for so many people just to come in and be like, oh my God, I'm so glad it's not just me, because you really do get stuck in this idea of being like, what's wrong with us? Like, why did this happen to us? But I've been there multiple times. My husband and I are kind of there right now, but we're fully aware of it being our 3rd time. We're kind of like, okay, we just know that this is par for the course. Mm-hmm. And I actually just had like a sit down with them, because the other day I was like, you and I, man, like we need to break out of this a little bit. And we just had our first like outing without kids the first time, like 2 weeks ago. I was like, we need to break out. And it was so nice to do. And it was like our awakening. And
what did it feel at first? Because you said I've been here before. Yeah.
Awkward.
Yeah.
I just commented that on, that was awkward. We went out and him and I, cause we went to this event, but we didn't really know anyone. And so we're just sitting there and but now we were expected to like small talk each other. And we're like,
the person you spend every single day with, and you're like, what do I ask you? Like, do I even have to talk to you?
Well, and then the challenge too, that I was trying to challenge myself. And it's not like we even talked about it beforehand, is I didn't want to bring up the kids. I didn't want to like have every conversation revolve back around the kids, because that's what we're so used to. Like our conversations nowadays are like poopy diapers, like toddler tantrums, like preschool isms. Like it's just our everyday conversation of going back and forth between that. And so when we're out together, it took us a little bit and we finally loosened up, and on the way home, then it was great. Of just like being able to do that.
It's so important to then be able to give yourself that permission to not spiral in our own heads or to not personalize what's happening in that moment, right? Because I know many people who are listening can say like, I would have taken that so personally. I would have done why isn't my husband talking to me? Do they not love me anymore? And then they would have then asked, are you mad at me? What's wrong? Mm-hmm. And then our minds go to all kinds of other places. We can sometimes open up that old suitcase of all of our old hurts and be like, you're always doing this and you never want to, and you're not even attracted to me anymore, right? Yeah. We can spiral so quickly rather than, and I love to talk about this, is giving ourselves permission to be in different seasons in our relationship. Sometimes these seasons are like winter, where we are a little more hibernating, where we're not growing, we're not connecting as much, but the intention is still there. Yeah. We are still moving towards the same path and the common goal, even though you might not be having a lot of sex, even though the idea of your partner touching you absolutely repulses you, even though it's like, I don't even know what to talk to you about, but you know that you're in this common goal. It's a we together versus the like you against me, which often shows up.
Yeah. Well, and I think another tricky thing too, and I actually was just talking to a friend of mine too, is it's also a challenge when it doesn't align what season you're enjoying. If your partner isn't enjoying, like right now my kids are 5, 3, and 1. Like I'm in the thick. Yeah, I think these are thick years. Like I feel like I'm treading. I said it the other day. I'm treading through pudding. Like it's these years. And I personally really like them. Like I do like them. I think they're challenging, but I do like them. I don't think my husband does. And I don't blame him for it. Like I don't blame him. And when that doesn't align, sometimes I feel like that's where him and I get miscommunication. But him and I more or less, I am like the communicator. I'm like the over communicator. And I think that's been our saving grace of being like, what's going on?
You're the external processor.
To a T.
Are you the yeah, and he's probably more internal processor.
Oh yeah, and in talking, because I said talking about communication styles and stuff like that is like I've had to learn a lot, because I am the type of person that talks out my stuff, but I can be accusatory in the way I talk, and I learned a long time ago that doesn't get us anywhere. So I feel statements are a huge thing. Like I feel like this. And that helps me a little bit, like bridge the gap of being like, you're doing this. So
I find a lot of people will come to me saying, but I'm saying these things and it's not working. And it's like, okay, so let's actually redefine what the goal is. Yeah. The goal is not necessarily to get your partner to change and be where you are already. The goal is to help you communicate what you feel and need so that over time, your partner can then start to understand. Yeah. And actually, Mary, I love that we're sitting down today, because last night I had one of those moments with my husband, Greg. And I said, what did I say? It was something about him coming in at bedtime. And I was like, I feel a little upset, and I just need you to like hang back a bit so that, you come in and you're the hero. And then I feel like I'm dumped, and just let me kind of like go through it. Yeah. And I did all the things, right? Yeah. I communicated I feel, what do I need you to do next time? I didn't do it in a reactionary way. I didn't come hot. Yeah. I think you and I can probably connect on this. I'd like to come in on the same. I can just put it all out there. Like you never, you always. And it's just so familiar. It's like my husband's not even around. I'm cramming the toddler bike into the car. And I'm like, of course it's your fault. Because if you didn't leave the grocery bag in the trunk, I wouldn't be late doing all the things, right? Yep. So what was interesting last night is this is how it classically goes in our relationship is you do all the right things. And then your partner then does the thing that they normally do. And we can predict this in our relationship. I knew he was going to get defensive in some way. Mm-hmm. And so he did. He did his defensive response of like, oh, well, like, I'm just trying to help out. I'm like, yes, I know. And next time, this is just what I need. So I continued to meet him in that calm place of expressing what I needed. And it was really neat because when we can slow our interactions down, he then came down and was like, yeah, you're right. I could come later next time and let you do that. I see how you would feel about that. And now we have a plan moving forward for next time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's honestly what it is. It's slowing down first to be able to communicate, and it takes practice. It does take practice. I think that's why, I mean, we haven't explored couples therapy at this point just because I feel like I just haven't gotten there and I don't know when the hell we would even do it. But for us, it's
and that's the problem though, right?
Yeah.
We don't have time to get to therapy.
I don't have time I had a regular individual therapist and I had to stop seeing her because I was like, I don't know when the hell I'm going to see you. Like, it's hard enough between work, kids, marriage. Like by the time I think we were trying to do nighttime, but even then bedtimes are always shifting. And I'm like, this has been hard, but,
it's a lot.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes practice and all that. And we're getting better at it, but my husband is so not defensive. Like he is so good sometimes. So I'm like, fight back, like fight me back a little bit. Come on. Cause he'll just like go with it.
Your messy self so I don't have to like be in my own
he'll just go with it. And I'm like, come on. Like I want something here, but he's good. Yeah. So that's a big thing that I hear women, just babies change you. And I think babies change you. And like you had said earlier, there is no prep course. And I really hate that. I really, really hate that. We did have a prep course because the only prep course we had, because we're Catholic, is we went through like pre-Cana and it was like marriage.
Sure. Yes.
That was what I can tell you from that. It was, we went and my husband will always laugh at this. We had our pre-Cana. We had a couple, because it's usually couples that volunteer to like teach these courses. And it was a couple that had been married for 20 something years. They were parents of 7 children. And while they're talking, they start getting into their finance issues and then they start crying. And my husband and I are sitting there, but like, note to self, don't have 7 children. Like, oh my God. And so we're like, okay. And then the second course after that, because it was like a 2-part, was a bunch of elderly people that were probably in their late 70s, 80s, telling you how to discipline your children for when it comes time.
Oh, no.
And you can imagine the type of discipline style that they would recommend.
Oh gosh. My husband and I talk about this a lot in terms of like just the speed at which we are receiving new information around how to show up today as parents. And it's so much, it's so fast and it's amazing. And then that alone creates conflict between two people because you bring your own experiences into this relationship, whether you have children or not, whether you're on the precipice of having a child or your 4th or 5th child, you bring in your own stuff from your own histories.
Yeah.
And so then we show up as different people trying to do this common thing. And it's so easy for us to become against each other. Just the piece here, there's research that shows that parents spend less than 30 minutes a day talking with each other.
Oh, got it.
When they have young children. And most of that conversation is around transactional pieces around parenting. Mm-hmm. Do you have the splash pants? Are you doing drop off? Who's getting the kids today? Who's making lunches? Did you change the diaper? Do we need more diapers? Right? Like all of these pieces to just make the family run, that then we lose that intimacy, the emotional connection that helps us to feel like we are not more than just that we are more than just roommates, right? That we're no longer lovers. We feel like we're just 2 ships passing in the night. And what I like to remind couples is that any really good team that you are running takes intentionality. Yeah. That you need to schedule something. Otherwise, I mean, like going to the gym or having that team meeting at work, it doesn't happen without scheduling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a big thing for us is scheduling sex and scheduling. Now we're going to be trying really hard to schedule like date night at least once a month, just having that time and really getting into it. And like right now we've been, cause we're just, again, we kind of got hit in my first year postpartum because my daughter wasn't taking a bottle. So for us to get out, that was incredibly hard, but now she is, and things have gotten a little bit smoother. So we're trying to find and get that piece back. And it does make a difference, because that's the part that hits you. It's like all of a sudden you kind of look at one another and you're like, I don't know what to talk to you about. Like, I don't know what to talk to you about. And if it doesn't involve work, and everything, it involves work on both sides. This is my work, his work. Like, it's just all of that. And I'm like, okay, what's at the core of us? And I feel like that's such an important piece, because like you said, like, we don't, all past stuff kind of boils out. And I'm actually going to share a reel, I think today. And I covered it a little bit on TikTok, was saying, no one talks about the fact that how unimaginably unequipped we all are when we become parents. Like, no one likes to talk about it because we are not equipped. No one is equipped when they step their feet into parenthood, because all of the garbage that we have buried, and you can have like major trauma, big trauma, whatever, all of that still gets buried in some level, and all of it just will surface out. And that's going to happen between you. It's going to definitely happen between your partner. And then you have to kind of navigate what that looks like. And the problem that I have with it is, like, you're not given space to talk about it. Because if I were to say, like, you know what, this morning, even like my son's 3, he's currently a big screamer. He likes to shriek at the top of his lungs. I will yell back. Like, it's a gut, like, immediate reaction for me to just immediately snap back. And if I were to open up about that, someone would probably tell me that I was doing something terrible. And whether it's a right or wrong reaction, I don't know, but people don't give us space to be able to, like, hey, I'm doing this. I don't really know why, but what do I do? And if people just shut it down. They're like, oh, bad parent. You're a terrible parent. You should have anticipated that this is how you're going to feel. And
it feels like it's very much like we're trying to put people in boxes. I think that's what you're saying, is like, if I'm not doing the right thing, then I'm obviously doing the wrong thing, rather than seeing this as a series of really hard things and just how much work, right? Parents are reparenting themselves. And that's why this is so heavy, because not only are you doing it on your own, but then your partner is also having their own triggers and reactions to the kids. And then we're being triggered and we're having these reactions between each other. And then somehow we need to then get into the bedroom and have sex so we can feel close and intimate. It feels impossible to play all those roles, right? And I think what's important for us to remember is, yes, the people who say, I had a good childhood. Yes, I believe that. And I don't shame parents. Parents, they did their best. And we also want to acknowledge that it is not humanly possible for every single person to have every single one of their needs responded to and met. And when we are on our parenting journey, or even our own reparenting journey, that we recognize that we are doing our best with our children, and that they're going to have their own stuff. It's inevitable. But then the question is, how do I then go from, well, and Mary, this is the title of my book, because so many people were speaking about this in my office, that then I also found myself crying in the shower after 2 kids saying the same thing, which is, I didn't sign up for this, which can apply to so many different levels. Specifically, I'm talking about relationships in the book. I'm talking about 4 different case stories that I've worked with, that I've helped to find the way through their struggle in their relationships, but also my own marriage. But I think the thing here is that we just couldn't have been prepared for everything that was required for us. So then, you think you and your partner are on the same page for everything. And then one day it's like, whoa, where did we go? And what are we doing here?
Yeah. Well, and that's the tough part. And I talked about once about being like touched out and how much that can be. And that was the comments that came in on social media. It was like, haven't you been around kids? How did you not know that being touched by your children was going to be a thing? And I was like, and the comments just kept coming in about that. And I was like, it's so frustrating, because again, I did anticipate how I was going to be as a mom. I did. Everyone anticipates how they're going to be as a parent, but guess what? The moment you step foot into it, it gets blasted to smithereens. Like, there is nothing that, again, like you said, I didn't sign up for this. Like, I didn't sign up for how it is now. That doesn't mean it's not wonderful. It is, but I wish it were better. I wish it were different than the way it is. And I think that's why, people like you and me and other creators on this space are trying to share a different thing because it's honesty. It's honest how it is right now. And for me, like that's my mission on this stuff is I kind of get excited when thinking about it is how it could potentially be for my children if they should make the choice to become parents. I get excited thinking that how much easier it might be for them. Because I think this is like a huge turning point in how parenting is looking when I think about that.
Huge. I remember asking my mom once after one of those really hard parenting moments, I had sent her a text and said, why didn't you tell 25-year-old Tracy that this like the next 10 years are going to be so hard? And her response really was, you wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have listened.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing for someone to say, this is a really hard thing. Let's talk about all the hard stuff. But then to have this complete loss of control. And that's what is at our core in so many of these conversations is it's this uncertainty. You know, I put my head on the pillow and am I going to sleep tonight? Mm-hmm. Is my child going to be up 10 times? Are they going to be up once? Do I get to sleep through the night? How am I going to feel tomorrow? And then the loss of control. You know, now that my children are older, it's this, you know, I said, please don't kick the soccer ball in the house this morning. And one of them storms down the hall and slams their door. Yeah. And it's like, that's not what I want them to do. I want them to be obedient children that say, yes, mommy, thank you so much for telling me not to do something that I really love to do inside the home because of all of these things. But because for us as parents, like we have to let that go. Mm-hmm. And also in our relationships, that means we can't control everything that our partner does or how they parent or how they show up. And that can be really tricky for us because ultimately our main goal together is we want our children to grow up to be respectable, trustworthy, independent beings. And yet we often parent from a place of fear. We get into fights with our partner because of that place of fear and loss of control. Did I lose you?
I'm here. Oh. Don't worry. Oh, no. I hope it's here. I'm here. If you can hear me, I'm here.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
Just waiting for it to level out. Riverside is killing me.
Come on. Oh, it's having a hard day.
Okay, good. There we go. Hopefully. Okay. Data hopefully fix itself. I don't know why. I have good Wi-Fi, but
I'm not, and I have good Wi-Fi too. Here, let me loop that back around. I'll do a loop and then you can catch on to it. The loop is, and so I think, Mary, then what the piece here is
what you just said. You're good.
Should I keep going?
Come on.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. Because right now it seems to be stable. I don't know. It's all stable on my end. I don't know. I'm going to have to rethink Riverside this week. That's all right.
Okay. Let me loop around. So I think, Mary, what this comes back to then is if we feel this place of fear and loss of control, then the question for us is, so what can I do next? Which is, what are the skills and tools that I can learn to help me feel closer and connected to my partner so I can communicate and we can feel like a team through these really hard parenting years?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. Cause it's a lot. It's a whole role shift. And that's the whole thing. And then you're not even dealing with the parenthood aspect, but then you're dealing with the roles in terms of like your work responsibilities and the weight that I know, like I have a lot of stay-at-home moms that follow me, but then I also have, working moms. And I've covered this before. If I'm saying working mom, I'm not saying that you're not working. It's just the term, because I want to just clarify
Mom's
that
doing all kinds of powerful things.
Yes. So mom's doing all types of powerful things, but I have a ton, and that immediately throws a wrench in of just being like, what sits on my shoulders versus what sits on his shoulders and things like that. And I actually just recently covered that of just like for Mother's Day, just shared percentiles of like just research that's come in about moms. And it was like, who's getting the recommended sleep? How much time of their day is spent for self-care. And like, I just went through and I had people on TikTok specifically say like, okay, now cover the dads. I was like, okay, let's cover the dads. So I covered the dads. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but I don't want this to be a comparison. I said, this is just existing. I said, some things may be out of our control, but some things may not be. And either way, it needs to be highlighted. And this is like a conversation piece that needs to come out, because I think our generation of parents today, we're in a crossroads, because we are still breaking out of generational habits. And this is going to be like it's going to be rough. It's kind of like breaking us in to what it's going to look like going forward.
100%. And so, okay, let's go back to the, like, what do I feel? What do I need? Mm-hmm. So when you had said touched out, I can 100% relate to that. I know most people can, and nobody can really feel prepared for that experience. Actually, I didn't have even the words for it, but I can remember my husband would like gently stroke my arm at the end of the day. I'm like, oh no, that's too much, right? And because it's our nervous system is overwhelmed and overstimulated. And so then when it comes to asking ourselves, because what we tend to do, particularly in relationship, is we look to the other person and say, if you just did more things, if you carried more of the mental load, if you changed, if you weren't so defensive, then things would be different. But we can't control other people. And we have to go inwards to ourselves then and say, okay, what is within my control? And where can I start making changes for me? Because what we know from systems theory, from all of the work I've done with couples and individuals, is that when one person starts to change, the whole dynamic of the relationship will start to change, and the other person might come along as well. And so what I want people to know is that if you are experiencing something like being touched out, you can make a choice to do something different. And in order to do something different, I want you to remind yourself that you are doing this in the service of your family, so that you are not overwhelmed and snappy and short with your kids, so that you have something left in your cup to pour into your relationship. Mm-hmm. And for many moms, again, depending on the season, sometimes it is saying, I am not available for the next 20 minutes. I'm going to take a hot shower, or I can't do parenting right now. You're parent A, I'm going to go and take a bath. Yeah. I'm going to take every Tuesday night between 7 to 8 p.m. and go for that yoga class that I've wanted to make sure that I'm getting in, or to see a friend, or something that's inside of us that's looking after us. And a lot of moms will say, this is so hard because my partner gets upset, or then they're in a bad mood, and then they struggle with bedtime. And my response compassionately is, yeah, and that's really hard. And you need to look after you, because nobody else can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's necessary. It's necessary sometimes. I know for me, like I'm the default. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I see my kids more than my husband does. And because of that, there are just things that I know better than he does. But he is perfectly capable, and he knows that. But sometimes you have to let them see that they know it too, because they almost take parent B role so often that they forget that they can step in as A. And it might be rough. It might just be rough. And I think as moms, like we just are like, oh, it's just easier. It's just easier if I do it. And I always tell moms, I like, challenge yourself to not take the easier route sometimes, because it's important for our spouses to see that they are just as capable. We want that for them. And that's what I always say, like whenever I've covered it on Instagram, because you always get the men comments. Like, I feel like it's men that get really upset by this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not complaining. I was like, you don't understand. Like, we want this for you all. Like, we want you to feel empowered when it comes to our children, because I think we've just been stuck in a society of making it seem like you're not as needed. Like, you're not as needed in this parenting capacity. And you certainly are. And we want that for you guys.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Eye-Opening Moments podcasts are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, Listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this. I can remember I had bought the diapers for 5 years in our family. I was the diaper buyer. And it was just something that I knew. I knew when to buy the next size. I even knew when to tell my husband, go and buy the next size of diapers, go and buy the box diapers. And I held that task really tightly.
Yeah.
And then my daughter was transitioning into pull-ups. And this one moment, I decided this is not what you should be doing for your relationship. But I thought, I'm tired of buying diapers. I'm not going to buy it because it wasn't my duty anymore at that point because he was doing the bedtime on a specific night. So anyways, my daughter then discovers that she has no pull up for that bedtime, and she just over 2, quite verbal. And she was able to say, "Oh, Daddy, how could you?" And it was a lesson to him. Yeah. He had failed and struggled in a way. Like, I didn't go and check the diaper basket. I didn't stock it up. I didn't look at it. I didn't hold this in my mind. I didn't go and buy diapers.
Yeah.
And he could feel that consequence from the kids. But I think sometimes what we do is we try to prevent them from struggling because that's what we were taught.
Yeah.
That's what we also witnessed our role models doing as well. And so then we start to repeat that rather than stepping back and saying, I think things need to be different here. And how do we start doing that? And also, Mary, acknowledging that for people who are listening, being like, oh, that sounds really hard. Yes, it is really hard. Yeah. And it's really uncomfortable to have to start making these changes. And I always remind people, look at the long run.
Yeah.
What is the long game here? Is it that you want to be the default parent always, or do you want to become more equal parents in this partnership?
Yeah, well, because that's what happens is you build resentment when it starts falling on you. And I know it has with me. I think it was like a month ago, I just threw a fit. I was so tapped out because I had said, I was like, I am the only one. You know what it was? I think it was over fast food. I think my husband went and got my kids Happy Meals, and I just lost it. I think I was just done. And not that I cared because my kids will eat that stuff. Are you still there? I hope you're still there.
I'm still here.
But, okay. So he went and got these, and I got so frustrated because I was like, I'm the only one that's trying to make sure that they're eating nutritionally. And I said, and if I'm not here to cook them food, you will go and get them this. And he was like, well, I'm sorry. And I felt bad because I'm like, I said to my husband during certain moments like this, I'm like, I'm so mad at your mom. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, she should have taught you better. Cause I'm like, oh, come on, man. But he wasn't raised in an environment where he learned to cook. He kind of was doted on a lot. So for me, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's a lot of weight on my shoulders. And I probably could have communicated that nicer, but I didn't. And we ended up having a nice conversation afterwards where I was like, you have to understand. I was like, this is a big thing that rides on me. And I said, you don't understand how my brain works. I said, it goes into what are my kids eating? Are they going to eat this forever? What would happen if something happened to me? That goes into my brain. And I said, and that's just not fun. I was like, it's not fun to go to bed right now worrying that what would happen? What would my kids be eating if I suddenly got hit by a bus tomorrow? That's not a fun thought. And he was like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you think that. I was like, well, that's how I work. So I'm like, we need an equal share in this thing. And it's much better.
We need the co-investment, the co-creation of this, that we are each responsible for this in a way.
Yeah.
And that feeding our children a nutritious meal, whatever it looks like, is both of our responsibilities. Mary, I want to challenge you on this. Do you ever allow yourself to phone it in and just go and get the McDonald's? Or is it more your partner that's the one that does it?
I actually do. Good. I've challenged. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Yeah. I've gotten good at it.
Sometimes what I hear is it's this projection almost in a way where it's I get so upset that you do this. And when I ask moms I'm working with, is do you ever allow yourself to do that? Many of them will say, oh, actually, no, I don't. And so then we start to explore this idea of well, what would it be like for you to allow yourself to go and do the quick meal and take the kids out? And is that something that maybe you can consider releasing a little bit so that you too can then, feel that joy of your children being like, oh, I love the Happy Meals and
yeah. It's like I think it's like a multi like layered thing like that right there. Cause I've done that. I do that. I usually do it once a week. Like I bring my kids to go get chicken fries or Burger King. But what happens is like on the weekends, then he'll go and get that stuff because I'm like burnt out. I'm burnt out from dinner and he'll go and I'm like, oh, that's so much fast food. And then I get guilty because everyone has these like negative feelings towards fast food and all that stuff where I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm messing up right now. And then I get angry and I'm like, well, if he only knew from that end how to chip in on the meal front, then maybe I wouldn't feel as burnt out with that and feeling as bad. So that's where it like gets in because I struggle with the whole fast food diet culture bullshit. So
it's a tricky cycle to navigate for sure.
Yeah.
But so what you're talking about here though, let's go back to the relationship piece, is that what we do is we hold all of this stuff inside, we grow resentful, and then we burst it out, which we know because resentment is the tip of the iceberg, and that the mass underneath the water often represents a lot of other emotions, which might be things like envy, jealousy, sadness, anxiety, worry, fear, depression, loss, guilt. There's something underneath there. And what I commonly see for people is that when it comes to resentment, we are doing one of two things. One, we are not communicating our needs. We're not communicating in a way where our partner can understand it. Or two, we're not getting our needs met. And number two is tricky because part of our society today says we should be getting all of our needs met by our partner, when actually that's not possible. So we think of emotional connection. We can get some of that met with our partner, but we also need to have friends and other people in our village to emotionally connect with.
Yeah.
Or we think of the friendship support that we need. So it is that question of, am I communicating my needs? And if I'm not getting my needs met, what am I doing to make sure that I do get those needs met so that we can offload that resentment, because we don't want to boil over like the pot of water on the stove.
And now what do you recommend for, because I feel like I talk to moms so often who, when they open up to their partners and they say like, I'm really struggling with this, they say like, they just don't get it. They don't get it and they're not open to it. What would you recommend for them?
I think that is the dining room table sit down and reevaluation of things. So sitting down at the table together, I always say shoulder to shoulder. It feels less attacking. It feels like it's more of a we against the problem, and then start putting out all of the things that you're struggling with. So is it about like you feel like you're sinking in the household stuff? Break down the household tasks. Yeah. Does it feel like all the childcare stuff, childcare research, put that on the list, and then be able to start to have a conversation with your partner of, I'm carrying all of these things and I am overwhelmed and we need to do something different. Yeah. And I think it's also important for people to understand this is that, and I teach these skills and tools inside Be Connected, my online program, but we need to understand that the spot that you got to today didn't just happen overnight. It happened from a series of events, even before you met your partner, all of those old repeating patterns. And then also the moment you met your partner, there were patterns that were starting to develop early on. And so it's not going to take a one thing fixes this. This should change overnight. It's going to take repeatedly talking about this stuff over and over again so that you can, I like to use the co-creation word, like you're co-creating your worlds together, not just a you versus me.
Yeah, which is so important. It's so important, especially in parenthood. Oh my God, the amount of what is the divorce rate? Isn't it like 70% of couples get divorced after they have kids? I think that's like the divorce rate, which is just wild to me. I wouldn't even doubt it either, because it knocks you. It knocks you right into left field. And it's hard to get out. It's hard to crawl back out. And that's what I said to my husband when we had like our reevaluation like a few weeks ago. I was like, I just don't want to get to a place where we dig ourselves in deeper, because it's really hard. Like we already saw it. We're not in a deep place, but we already saw how awkward it was, that first interaction between you and me. And if we let that space just keep going further and further and further, it's going to be so hard to get back together. And I said, we don't want that. I don't want that where you hang in there. And then I feel like that's what I'm seeing. It's funny, like being now a grown adult as a parent, and now with like even my college friends and things like that, just hearing how their parents are divorcing or my high school friends' parents are divorcing. It's like once their kids were grown up, now their marriages are breaking down suddenly. And you hear that. And it's like, because I think people have hung in there for long enough, but I don't know the full story, but I don't want that. And that's why I said to my husband, I was like, I don't want to hang in there. I want this to be good.
It just, yeah. I know this. It's one of the reasons why I wrote the book that I did.
Yeah.
It's the reason why I didn't sign up for this, because I know that what you're saying right here, Mary, is the exact thing that people tell me all the time in my office, that we don't want to just hang in there and get to that point. We want to have the relationship that we want and desire. And having that initial conversation is really hard, and it can feel messy. And then you keep having more conversations. You can keep having frequent check-ins. You can schedule. And a lot of people will say, I'm too busy to do things. And I argue with people and say, you have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We are all on our phones for 10 extra minutes. We can put 10 minutes aside so that you and your partner can sit and connect and talk to each other. I recently created a 100 questions list, and my husband and I took it on our date night, and we had so much fun doing it because there was no right or wrong. It wasn't focused on the kids. It was focused on like the process of just him and I exploring each other, because the reality is there's so much inside of each of you that exists each day that you then have to find a way to bridge that. And so I took the guesswork out of it, because I know one of the most common things I hear from parents is, we haven't done this for so long. I don't know what to do. What do we say to each other? And so I made this list of 100 questions, and people can download it for free and just use it.
I'm going to use it. I'm going to do that. I was telling Kev that. I was like, I'm going to do that. And icebreakers, just like something just for fun. Because you hear about stuff like that. There's like different things out there that exist for that reason. And I'm like, I want something that makes us feel goofy and like ourselves again, like at our core. Like that's who we fell in love with, was the people at our core. And I kind of just want to find that again. And it's hard. You lose it. We lose it in ourselves. Like, especially as moms, I think can relate to that is, when you separate us outside of a partnership, when we become parents, we forget who we are at our core. And it takes a lot because we're trying to figure it out individually and then as a unit. So it's definitely a process. Well, amazing. I love this conversation. This was so good. This was like very helpful, and I'm sure people this will help a multitude of women listening.
I'm so glad, Mary. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast here. And then also thank you to everyone who's listened. And I love hearing from people. So if you are on Instagram, come over, send me a DM, say hello. Let me know what stood out for you from today's episode.
Yeah. Definitely do that. Leave a rating and review as always. And then as I always do in the show notes, I will link everything for Dr. Tracy. That way, if you guys want to find her, I'll also put the link. I'll find the link for the 100 questions. That way you guys can do that. Maybe I'll do that on Instagram. I'm going to challenge. I'm going to set up a date. I'm going to get off of here, and I'm inspired to set up a date night for Kevin and I, and we're going to do that and have some fun.
I love it. And please tell me, send me a DM after and tell me how it goes.
Or maybe we'll make a podcast episode. Him and I usually record a podcast episode once a month. Maybe we'll do that as like our 100 questions type of thing. That would be fun.
I love it.
But yeah, so it's important. It's important. And for everyone listening, I think we tend to think that our relationships can take the back burner. And it's okay for them to sit on the back burner. I would argue against that. I think our relationship should be the front runner on all this stuff. Yeah. Because it's...
Yes. And if people need more of an encouragement for that, remember your children are watching you. So you want to model to them what it means to repair, what it means to say sorry, what it means to connect and to have physical affection, what it means to go back and say, hey, I think I was really short with you earlier. I'm really sorry that came up.
Yeah. And I think it's a human piece and just like that final perspective. And I've always said motherhood is the one job that I don't want to get perfect, because what good would that do for my kids? Because they're watching. And if they see a picturesque thing, and I think, couples might listen to that and be like, okay, well, we need to act happy in front of the kids. That's great. That's great. But it won't do them any good when the time comes that they get old old enough to realize. And that's what I was saying. Like now I'm older and you see as a child, you saw all these couples that were like so happy and now they're all divorced and you're like, wait, what? Like, what happened? But you all realize like they were just hanging in there. They were hanging in there and making it look happy. And I would challenge you guys not to do that. Like hang in there and for the right reasons, but let the honesty show as opposed to just like blanket happiness, because that's what they need to see.
Another episode down. Thank you all so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, I would be so appreciative if you would leave a rating and review. I cannot begin to tell you how much those mean to me, but also how much they help me get in front of more eyes and more ears. As always, be sure to check back every Tuesday and Friday for a new episode, whether it's an episode with me and my husband, me and Katie, or just another incredible amazing guests. Stay tuned for more honest, real, raw chit chat. And hey, do me a favor before you go. Remind yourself how amazing you are, how enough you are, how special you are. And boy, oh boy, I sure am glad to have you here. Thanks, friend.